Good morning, my Ohana. Today is February 18th, 2025, and we are going to be working on curves. Now, if you have been following any of my lives or where I was in Mona's or Deb's live, I have been working on this curved block. Many people are afraid of curves, but we're going to take that fear away. 2025 is a year of exploration for me, and this is the test quilt that I made with the test block that I made. Now, I did not have a quilt pattern to go by, and I really did not look. I just wanted to make a block, and I went ahead and created a template. If you are interested in the template, you can email me at awkwardquilterga@gmail.com, and I will be happy to send that to you. So this is my test block. It is ready to be quilted. I am doing an unedited video, and so I'm apologizing in advance for any mistakes that I may make. What I do have is two fat quarters. I have ironed them down for the most part on with the fabric. Okay. And these are solids. If you are going to be using a print to do this, a print in a solid, or anything that's alternating, you will want to have two with your print side down and two with your print side up. So two facing together, right sides facing together for a total of 4 strips. These are 6-inch strips, and they need to be at least 11.5-inch long. This is the template that I've been using. It is cut on freezer paper. I have used it for all the blocks. There were 25 blocks in that quilt, and I did not have to cut another one. I am cutting 4 at a time, and that is just to keep my lines consistent. One of the worst things is to slip and not have those lines match up. So what I am going to do, and I'm going to turn it this way, I'm going to make a letter P. I want to make sure that there is full coverage. And let me get my ironing mat and my iron. And again, with the shiny side down of the freezer paper, I am just lightly ironing it on. And that is only because I do not want any shifting in the cutting process. So I have it cut this way. I'm going to remove my mat. I have a tiny sewing space, so when I do videos, it does get a little difficult to manipulate everything around the cameras. What I am going to do is I'm going to look for a straight line for that edge, and that is just easier to work with when I'm cutting And I like to get that taken care of first. So cut that away. And cut that away. That over there. And so I have a piece that looks like this. And with my rotary cutter and my hands safely away from it, I'm just going to follow that curve. I want to be on the outside edge, and I want to take it slowly, as slow as possible. And if you cut off a little snippet, it's okay. You can keep these for another project. If you saw one of my videos, I did purchase a further scan and cut for applique pieces and learning new techniques. So that will work perfect for my scan and cut. And again, I'm just going to cut this side off. Just gently turning. It does help if your blade is new. If you're using a dull blade, the fabric will not catch all the way through, and it may cause a little frustration. So I'm just going to move all of this over. And what I'm left with is this. I'm going to peel this away. No sticky residue. I'm going to save it for another block. And I'm going to assemble the blocks. So I'm going to make a P. We want to alternate it. I want to keep my straight edges on the outside because ultimately what we're looking for is a 10.5 unfinished block. And this is where I said that if you're utilizing prints, you will want 2 fabrics for a total of 4, 2 facing each other, right sides facing together. And that is so we can make our mirrored image. So here we go, like this. Okay? And I do not want you to get scared or worried and think, oh, I can't do this. Yes, you can. We're just going to go very slow. This is turtle sewing. This is not the hair. We are not doing speed sewing here. We're going to take our time and enjoy the process while we're doing this. So I'm going to move these 2 up out of my way for a minute. I'm going to take this, and I like to keep my thin edge on the left-hand side of me. I'm just going to simply fold that down so it looks like that. Okay. And then I'm going to gently turn it, shimmy it up where my corners are touching. So I want those corners to touch and be as even as possible. And I am going to stick a pin about 1.5 inches down. Then I am going to take my block, gently fold it over, move it over to the other corner where those triangles match. And I'm going to stick a pin in it. Now, some people will have I have seen videos on doing curves, and my mind works a little bit differently. I did not, I'm not gluing it down. I'm not putting a gazillion pins. I'm just going to go slow on this to make everything match. And I'm going to do the same for this one. So I'm going to flip this one over because, again, I like the thin part to be on my left side when I'm working. It's just easier for me to line up. However you choose to do it is up to you. You do it the way your brain works. And again, I'm just meeting those corner curves and putting a pin in it. So now I have two pieces that look like this. Don't worry, have no fear, it is going to work. I am going to switch my camera here. Again, this is unedited, so if there is um, an issue, go ahead. But if there's an issue, you're going to see it. One of the things I do like to do, and I'm going to make sure you can see it. One of the things I do like to do is use my a leader and an ender, and that is just to keep my, and let me see if I can show it right here. I'm going to use a leader and ender, and it's just to help keep these points right here stationary and not get caught up in the hose of my sewing plate on my machine. I do have my stitch length popped down to 2, and that is only because I do not like to sew at a 1.8. A lot of people do, that's up to you, but I do not like messing with those seams when I have to use my seam ripper. And so I'm just going to gently feed this in. I do use an awl for a lot of my piecing. It just helps feed it in, and I'm trying to find the right camera angle for this. So I'm gently going to start my thing, start stitching, and I just want it to grab the first inch or so of that fabric, and I'm going to pull my pin out. Okay, and then I do have some seam tape, and I'm going to keep in line with my seam tape the whole time I'm sewing, my 1/4 inch mark on my seam tape. And I always want to make certain that that bottom fabric, I can see threads of it, that I can see it peeking out. That way I know it's being caught. And then I am simply going to slowly sew this together. If you go too fast, you might get a little frustrated with it because it may go offline, not keep your 1/4 foot, that your fabric might get fed underneath it and not be caught up in the seam. So we just want to go slow. We do not want to pull the fabric. And we do want to straighten out the fabric so that there's no tucks or pleats. If it helps you to sew with the awl or a pin, that's fine. But we're just kind of keeping everything nice and neat on that line, letting the fabric and the sewing machine do its job. Now towards the end, I use an awl, and you can use a pin. And I just want to keep those corners together and with that 1/4 inch seam. So I'm going to take that out, trim that away, and I'm going to do my second one. So I'm just going to repeat that process. The blocking itself, if you are not videotaping, which for the most of you, you would not be, does not take that long. It is not one of those blocks that takes 2 hours, The cutting is relatively straightforward. You're just slowly feeding in, staying on that curve, and keeping that fabric on your stitch line. You may have to manipulate and lift up your feed dogs depending on what type of machine you have. I do have a knee lift that helps me out if I feel like I'm getting a little off course. And we're just gently going through, taking it very slowly, keeping everything straight, and moving fabric as we need to. Again, I don't want you to be scared of this process. I just want you to have fun with it. And your first couple blocks may be a little wonky, but you will be able to get the process, get the hang of it in no time. All right, so now I have two pieces like this. Let me go back and switch this camera out. I have two pieces that look like this. Let me get my ironing mat. On Streamlabs, what I'm using to do this video, you do not have the ability to pause. So you kind of get to see the raw deal with me flipping things around in the small space. And I'm going to get my iron. Whatever color you decide, fabric you decide to press to, you want to be consistent and do it on both pieces, on both sewn pieces. I want to turn it over, and I do want to make certain that everything is nice and flat, that my curve is nice and flat. And if you should have a little pleat the first time you do this, the third time you do it, the 10th time you do it, if there's a little pleat, don't worry about it too much. We can always quilt that out. Put that back. Move this out of my way. And now we have two units that look like this. Okay. Always with the threads, little thread pieces. Now, you can choose to sew this all the way down. It was a little difficult for me when I did it that way. If things didn't line up, I think I stretched the fabric. So I'm going to show you the way that works for me. However, you can do it any way that is comfortable for you. Many of you have more years than I do as far as quilting goes. And so I just kind of make things up that works for me. I am going to nest my seams, and remembering that it's a curve, I want to make sure that it remains on a curve, and it's not like this, but we're nesting those seams. And I am going to pop a pin in that seam right there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to find that lower portion of the curve, and I'm going to pop a pin in that as well. I just want it to stay right there. And again, I'm showing you my method. It may be easier for you. I like sewing on this short point So I'm just gently turning it over. I'm going to find my corners again. And I'm going to pop a pin in it about 1.5 inches down just to keep it all nice and tiny. I'm not doing anything with this end. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to sew on the curve like we did, and I'm going to go a couple stitches past that nested seam. I want to make certain that I go past that area. And we're going to go ahead and do that now. So let me go back to my sewing machine. We're just going to repeat this process. I'm going to make sure that's lined up when I feed it through. Sometimes we have a tendency to tug on our fabric and it goes, or I know I do, and it doesn't start off at that 1/4 inch, which is what I want it to do. And I'm going to repeat that process. I'm just going to take it slow, go around, making certain that I can always see that bottom fabric. I don't want to see a huge hunk of it. I just want to know that it is there. And however way you have to hold that fabric to do it. I'm thinking of my friend Annette, the fabric magician, who is working with just one hand at the moment as she sews, and I big kudos to her for even doing that. I would probably be crying and throwing fits. But you do it any way you can to manipulate your fabric, and again, go slow. Always making sure that you can see that and there are no pleats. Just kind of use your fingers or whatever else you need to flatten out that fabric. Don't be afraid of it. Okay, when we get to that nested seam, we're just going to want to make sure this bottom portion of the fabric is still on your seam tape line. I'm going to remove that. I'm going to go just a couple of inches down. And who knows what happened to my ender. But I'm going to sew off of it. Okay. So you kind of can guess what I'm going to do with it here. At this point, and let me see if I can show you. At this point, I am just going to, let me get back to the other camera and make it a little bit bigger. So I have sewn this edge, went in, sewed that edge, ending right past the nested seam. I'm turning it over, and I am just going to repeat that process of putting my corners together. You know, I have a piece like this. I don't have to pin in the middle because we've already stitched that down, and I am going to complete that seam. So let me go back to the sewing machine. Taking our time. And if you get, again, if you get a pleat in it, it will be quilted out. I'm not perfect, and so each quilt block is a little different. Some of it is just, sometimes they're a little wonky because I want to sew, but my mind is not functioning correctly, and so it doesn't come out the way I want to. In those cases, I just have to give it up. Put everything aside and say I'm going to start over again. or return to it when I'm in a better frame of mind. This is my mental health space, and if my sewing is starting to stress me out, then it is no longer providing me a mental health getaway. So I'm just finishing this up. When I get to that nested seam, I'm going to go over it, and that's to lock my stitches. And I'm just going to sew off of it. Now, if you have a cutter, you can go ahead and cut it. And I went too far on that. Let me put my cap on there. And let me get back to this camera. There we go. We have our block. I am going to get my iron. Okay. And sometimes the fabric speaks to you and tells you how it wants to be ironed out. And I'm just giving it a light press right now. I'm going to turn it over, and I want all my seams to go in the same direction. This will just help when you're putting your final block together. When you're sewing all the curved blocks together, this will just make it a lot easier. So I'm getting all those pressed down, being mindful of those edges because they are thinner. Then I'm going to come back over it, give it a nice press. A little secret for what I do when I am making multiple blocks, because I do not use a clapper or anything like that. Excuse me. I don't use a clapper or anything like that. I have multiple wool mats, and so I just put it between two wool mats and iron my next piece, put it down, and by the time I'm done, these pieces are nice and flat. So let me move this out of the way. And here you go. The swirly block, the curved block, it should finish at 10 point, or it should be an unfinished 10.5 inch block. And then it will be a finished 10-inch block. And then you just have fun with it. You can do anything you want. If you want the template for this, please email me at awkwardquilterga@gmail.com. I would love to see your blocks if you choose to do this in your creations. Very simple. Don't be afraid of the curve. Don't be afraid. It opens a world of possibilities. And that's about it. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I would appreciate if you like and subscribe and even comment on this video. I love to hear back from you. I love to see what you're creating. Your creations inspires me to continue to create and be on this wonderful quilting journey. Look for more videos on other topics coming soon. Until then, be blessed, be kind, and keep sewing. Thank you all. Bye.